speech tonight is called The Quest. What? I don't know. But Charlie is a one-time motivational speaker. That doesn't mean he's only done it once. But he's a one-time motivational speaker. So, can I get Charlie get into his slide now?
Thank you very much, Ian. And Ian is correct. I am a one-time motivational speaker. I used to speak, delivering motivational talks, and then I stopped because I lost the motivation. And why did I lose the motivation? Remember 2012, that great year with the gold post boxes and the glorious Olympics and the gold medal winners. And what happened is that so many athletes and canoeists and cyclists fell from their tracksuits into the training room and into the corporate world and delivered their motivational speeches. And what did they all sound like? Anyone hear any? Yeah, you might have heard one or two. Well, they sounded quite similar. You heard about punishing regimes. You heard about austere diets. And most of all, you heard about this tough determination to never, ever, ever give up. And frankly, it's just exhausting listening to it. So I decided, no, motivational speakers, they imply that we know best. Just follow the great athlete and then you do what they say and you will get your own gold medal. And I thought perhaps it's more interesting to hear from people who didn't succeed, who didn't win the gold medal. Let's hear a bit more motivational speaking, perhaps from people who came second, who became last. People who stopped halfway around that London Marathon. People whose marriage was a bit dodgy, not so great. People who managed to find happiness amongst mediocrity. Because after all, I think that summarises who I am and probably who many people in the world are. So motivational speakers went out the window. But in that case, Ian's invited me here to talk for a few minutes. What am I going to talk about? The title of tonight's talk is The Quest. And we're going to talk a bit about what a quest is, how quests have been around with us for a long time and how we see them historically, how we have our modern day versions of quests, and some peculiarities about the quest story. Now, I just finished a book, and as the old saying goes, it took me a long time to read it. But I don't mind, because it's quite a big book. It was quite challenging to read it. I had to ignore the kids for quite a long time to get through this book. Ignore my wife and so on. It was worth it. Good book. And do you remember the old story? There are only 7 plots for every story. That's the old myth. Well, this chap, Christopher Booker, took 34 years of his life to analyse that statement, and he came up with his answer, which is, here are 7 plots. You'll see them. And we're going to look at this one plot, which is called The Quest. So what is the quest? Well, it's that moment when our hero or heroine has been called to do their duty, and it is compelling, and they cannot stop until they achieve their quest. Think James Bond. Think Sinbad, Jason and the Argonauts. Think Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. They have to go somewhere, they have to achieve their quest, and they have to come and return. And how Christopher Booker breaks it down is he talks about 5 stages of this quest. The first stage is the compelling call. And we know what the call looks like, don't we? Bond walks into the office, chucks his hat, flirts a bit with Moneypenny, and then M says, well, Blofeld been up to his old tricks again. Or, Jason, here's a sign from the gods that he has to go, and he has to travel on this great and deep and long and perilous journey. So that is his quest. Our quest looks a little bit different. Our quest looks something like this. Can I borrow your phone? Our quest looks something like this. Missing out on a better car insurance deal? Act now, otherwise you could be losing out. That's what starts our quest. In the modern era, in the 21st century. You will get this back. This wasn't a quest to steal a phone. So that's the first stage. the compelling call to duty. The second stage then, we get into a journey. And we know the type of journey, it's fraught with danger. There's obstacles in the way. Maybe we have to get down the yellow brick road, or we've got Poseidon or the nymphs or the sirens from the seas challenging and stopping us from going forward. And of course, they get these incredible vehicles, these incredible ways to move forward. What do we have? Well, I love my little Skoda. It's a great car, but it is certainly no Aston Martin DB5, and it's not Pegasus, the winged horse. But nevertheless, it gets me on my journey, particularly thinking about my car insurance. Then we meet our companions on the way. We meet these noble companions, don't we? We hear them in the stories. We meet Gandalf the wizard, Professor Dumbledore, the wisest wizard that's ever existed, the Tin Man, Wyatt Trelawney, for those of you who read Treasure Island as my favourite book. Who do we get? We get a nodding dog imitating our Prime Minister. Oh yes. Oh yes. Let's stop this story for a minute and think about car insurance. Have you ever thought about how they advertise car insurance? It's extraordinary, isn't it? We have Churchill, oh yes. We have our greatest naval hero, don't we? We have Nelson with Admiral car insurance. We have Swift. Remember who advertises Swift? Swift is advertised by a rock musician called Iggy Pop. His main claim to fame is sticking a chicken down his trousers during a live act. Now, of course, this is the ideal choice for advertising. Who wouldn't have thought of this? But mostly, I think about Money Supermarket. Do you know what they say? They say, "You're so Money Supermarket." They've turned their company name into something that is meant to sound heroic and meant to sound chivalrous. Now, I don't know about you gentlemen, but it seems to me that saving money is not a very chivalrous thing to do. When you meet a lady, you spend money. You give her the kingdom. You treat her. You don't become heroic by saving your money. Well done. Thanks for sharing that. So much, the whole car insurance world has turned itself and turned the chivalry on its head a little bit. I digress. We'll go back to our plot. We've done our journey. And then what happens is the final fight, isn't it? The final showdown. We've got the obstacles, we've got perhaps our reinforcements, but we certainly will have a thrilling escape from death, narrowly missing the bullets and dodging the arrows, and it will be a scary moment. What's our equivalent? Press 1 for. Press 2 to speak to the operator. Press 3. It's our quest. Can we speak to a human being? Can we get on the phone and actually speak to a person to sort out this great car insurance ordeal? This is our challenge. And finally, of course, we know our hero achieves their victory. Jason comes back and is praised by the gods, and he gets to marry. James Bond always gets to go. Dorothy goes home to Kansas and she's reunited with her family. What can we do? We can go home and we can speak to our wives and say, "You'll never guess how much money I saved on my car insurance today." And I spoke to a person. How noble am I? So that is our story. The modern day equivalent of a quest. It's exciting, isn't it? Don't get much better than that. So it's a search. It's definitely a search. And what are we searching for? Our equivalent of a quest, because we do feel good about these things. Well, it seems that we're searching for power. Military power, economic power, social power. But most of all, my observation is people are searching for actual power. Physical power, particularly to charge up their phones, to charge up their laptops. We have one in this very room, someone has got their computer on charge. Now, I work, as we were talking about at dinner, I work as a trainer, and quite often I'm in rooms like this that don't belong to me, with people who the room also doesn't belong to. It's in a hotel or it's in a school, and I'm doing some training. And at some point in time, I'll look around the room and I will notice all the plugs are filled in. One here, one there, one there. People have plugged in their phones, people have plugged in their laptops, they've plugged in their iPads, because these things run out so quickly that people need to get the charge. And the thing that I'm really struck by is no one ever asks me. I'm not offended, I'm just really curious. Because isn't that stealing? Isn't turning up in someone's premises and just popping your plug in and taking their power, isn't that stealing technically? And what I'm really struck by is most of the training that I do is with policemen and head teachers. They seem to be quite alright with this. No one is getting arrested or giving themselves detentions. That seems to be fine. So what's that all about? Well, there seems to be this little world around power and the sort of power that you can use. And I had this moment when someone who did actually ask me permission, he said, Charlie, I want to show you something. He said, I've got a new plug. Now, have you ever had someone say that to you? It's quite an unusual, unexpected thing. I've got a new plug. And you know what's so good about my plug? Not one, but 2 USB ports. 2 ports. I can plug in, I can charge in 2 things at the same time. And I had 2 thoughts, 2 simultaneous thoughts. The first thought was, that's really sad. Isn't it? That's just a bit desperate to tell me that thing. My second thought was, I wonder if I can get one of those. It sounds like a really good idea. And guess what? I've only got one. And it is a really good idea. So power. Think about power. Think about physical power. And sometimes this quest that we have in the modern world is for something physical, is for our technology, is for modern things. Anyone here fans of Desert Island Discs? You want to listen to it? So you know that they do this thing where you have to choose a luxury. I'm going to ask you to do that. Spend a moment and you can just mutter to the person next to you, what would your luxury be? But a technology thing. If you were going to have your own quest on your desert island, you're going to be there for an indefinite period of time, what would the one thing you would take that involved electricity? Obviously you couldn't plug it in, it's a fantasy world, but what would be the thing that you would like to take that would really help you? Just share it for a moment with your friend. The person who gets the most interesting one gets a prize. So just spend a minute or so.
We can't plug it in.
So, gentlemen, let's hear a few. What things are you going to take?
Laptop.
So you've got a laptop, great, what else?
Solar radio.
A solar panel, that's a very good idea. A wind-up radio.
Well, it's an internet radio, but that would be a laptop or whatever.
An internet radio, what else?
Ice cream maker.
An ice cream maker. Well, I think the prize for originality goes to the ice cream maker. You give that back with a globe, find which island you go to, give it to your grandson. Yeah, one of those. I was thinking about it, how I would answer that question, and I think I would take a dictaphone, a little dictation machine. 2 reasons that I take that. Firstly, because I could make sure that I was still relatively sane, I could record myself and then listen to it back. And secondly, is that I'd have someone to have a conversation with. So I'd record some questions. Hello Charlie, it's nice to see you today. How are you? And then I could play that back and I could just have a little chat with myself, and that might tip me into the insanity, but...
You're very well, aren't you? You're there already.
Very true. So that is some few thoughts about the technology and our quest to have that. So where does all this stuff come from? All this quest, all this business about these compelling journeys we have to go on? Well, it's a historic thing, and it's a physiological historic thing. If I talk about the fight or flight response, people know what I'm talking about? Yeah, okay. So often we talk about 4 F's in the fight or flight response. And this is a physiological thing. When we took relatively this shape that we have nowadays, apart from the spectacles of course, about 30,000 years ago, we were under great threat at all times. And we really had to be at the top of our game, knowing what was going on, to make sure that we stayed out of danger. And the 4 F's would help us. So the first F would be flight. If we are faced with something that's going to eat us, and we are faster than it, we would let it. flying, run away. Second thing, if we're faced with danger, but we reckon we're stronger than it, well, we would fight it. Third is if we were threatened, we couldn't run away, we couldn't fight it, but we reckoned that it wasn't the brightest and it didn't have the best eyesight, we would freeze. Just stand still. So they couldn't see us. And the fourth would be we may meet someone who could be our companion. And we would need to be able to know that. So of course we would be able to flirt with that person. So there are 4 F's. Now the fact is, we still have that fight or flight and freeze and flirt response now. But we don't have the same dangers as we had 30,000 years ago, do we? There are not woolly mammoths wandering up and down Chipstead High Street, certainly not the last time I looked. You're not likely to be invaded by hordes of leatherhead Rotarians, unless you're particularly upset them.
Doesn't take much.
So what we're doing, this is a bit of an anachronism. We're dragging around this ball and chain back from the Stone Age, and we're having these reactions, having these physical reactions that really don't help us. But what it does do is it drives our quest, and it drives our quest for power, and it drives our quest for energy and for getting involved in super ordeals. And where we see it, and I'm always interested in seeing it, is in the little things. So I know that many of you are retired, and you're probably well out of the world of work, because the way that language has gone nowadays is quite bizarre. I was looking the other day at some job titles for people. Anyone know what a Scrum Master is? Not in rugby, but no. Does anyone know what a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt is?
Judo.
Yeah, you'd have thought. Both of those job titles are project managers. A project manager black belt. You can imagine the scene, can't you? Oh, someone at home going, I'm really tired, I've had a long day. And your wife will look and say, what's happened to you? You look all neat and organised and colour-coded. Yeah, I know, the black belt's got me again. They project manage me to within an inch of my capability. So they use these grand, highfalutin titles to make them sound like we're doing something epic. And there's other ones that I read. I read a marketing ninja. You want to be a marketing ninja? That's scary. And I read a commercial development guru. Well, you know what they say about gurus? You mentioned the word earlier on gurus. You know what they say about a guru, don't you? A guru is quite simply someone who doesn't know how to spell the word charlatan. So they use these job titles to make themselves very grandiose, and it doesn't wash. It certainly doesn't wash with me. That's the job titles. Then there's the other aspect of the language. Now we've had many conversations, haven't we, about the ridiculous business jargon and business speak that you hear, and all of this going forward and taking it offline and so on. Well, I'm interested in the stuff that make it sound like a quest. And it's particularly those words that make it sound like you are not running an office, not doing some IT, but you are doing some noble sports activity. So often it's talking about the end game, getting into a huddle, catching the ball, dropping the ball, do this by close of play. It's all that team running, dynamic enthusiasm. And most of all, and don't worry, I won't break it, but most of all, it keeps on coming back to the simple telephone. I was told the other day that if I wanted to get some traction, and why would I want to get some traction? I've got feet, I haven't got wheels, don't need traction. But if I wanted to get some traction, what I needed to do, I needed to think about the fella in Swindon, and I needed to jump on the phone to him. Jump on the phone? Really? Jump? How would that help, jump on the phone? And someone came to my house today to talk about marketing, and he told me when we have our latest campaign, we smash the phones. Well, that doesn't seem like a very good tactic. If we just smash the phones, how are we going to get through to anyone? But smashing the phones apparently is a new way. So this is the language of excitement and making sports sound like our world of work. And of course, it's not. Our world of work is different. But these are my musings. These are my thoughts. I may be right, I may be wrong. I may be someone you don't listen to. What I certainly know is I haven't quite come to all my realisations the easy way. Look back at my life and I think I've obviously been on some quest and I've never got it right the first time. So when I was younger, I used to travel on the school bus with my friends, and I used to sit at the back of the bus and talk rubbish really, but muse on life and discuss things. And they used to refer to me jokingly as Charlie the amateur psychologist or the amateur philosopher. It always used to make me laugh. Well, of course I was an amateur, I was only 15. How could I have been a professional? And no one was going to pay me. At least they just ignored my invoices. What do you do? And I've gone through my life and I've never got anything right the first time, it seems. I've had 2 careers, 2 specific careers, 2 marriages. I've had 2 surnames. Wachowski's not my first surname. I've had 2 religions. So I never seem to have got anything right the first time. I've only had 1 gender, you'll be pleased to know. I haven't gay practice or anything. But one thing I think I have learned is that you can't judge a book by its cover. Even this book. Can't judge a book by its cover. And talking about that, does anyone remember what was the best-selling book of 2012?
Harkest of Madrid.
Good guess, but it wasn't. But said with such confidence.
50 Shades of Grey.
There, Colin remembers it very. Was it a good read?
I
He fondly remembers page 85.
Well, still laminated.
Only because you pointed it out.
And does anyone know why that was the book of 2012? Was it that suddenly the relatively prurient British public had all gone a bit smutty?
Good PR.
Could have been good PR?
You can buy from Amazon. You can buy any read the show the book cover.
Exactly. They've read it on their Kindles. So forget about judging a book by its cover. We didn't know that people were reading their soft porn because they were all hiding behind their Kindles and they're pretending they're reading their Dickens or their Shakespeare. So that is the reason why that book became so popular. Maybe someone, at least a couple of you here have read it, so that's always good to know. So let's not judge a book by its cover, and let's not judge people by their actions. One of the things that I note, and I can't help by finding some sort of judgment, is it seems a big quest is people's quest to be famous, to be celebrities, to be on the air. And we think about all the different ways that you can get on the TV. Anyone here been on TV? Apart from obviously on Crime Watch. Anyone been on TV? Colin, obviously.
Yep.
What have you been on?
Oh, many years ago on farming programs.
30 years ago.
He's going to regret saying
Well, be kind. Well, one of the things that I note is that there are so many reality TV programs that you could go on. So I'd like you to imagine this scenario. You go home and either your wife or your close friend you speak to says to you, do you know what, life's getting a bit boring, it's getting a bit stale, we need to move with the times, we need to get ourselves on the telly, and we need to get on a reality telly program. You choose which one, and if you don't, I'm leaving you. Don't, I'm never going to speak to you again. Now that might be good grounds, and you might say, okay, well, I'll help you pack your bags. Or you might say, yeah, okay, I want to have a look. Well, I'd like to know, and you can have a moment to reflect, chat with the person next to you, which would be the reality TV show you would be able to go and you could just about stomach it, and which would be the one that you would draw a line under and say, actually, if it's me, if it's that program or the marriage, then it's been lovely knowing you. Have a moment, have a chat, see which will be the one. Be really interested to hear your views.
oh yes.
So I jest a little bit about having to make the choice about going on these telly programs or having to leave your wife. I'm just recently celebrating my 20th years of marriage. 20 years of marriage, and I was really looking forward to a big party. But for some reason, my wife was really reluctant. Because she really only wanted to count the years that she and I have been married. She didn't want to count all of my 20. She couldn't be convinced. So what were the TV programs? Which would you really love to go, or would you tolerate going on?
I can't do Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Yeah, but you're having a punt at that. Well,
I'll have a crack at that.
Yeah, have a crack at that.
Embarrassing body.
Mastermind would be great, wouldn't it? Nice. So we've got the Air Edition and the commercial corner over here. Yeah, what else?
Antiques Roadshow.
Go on the Antiques Roadshow. Would you?
As an exhibit.
How much would we get? How much would we get for John? Antiques Roadshow. What else would we do?
Strictly come down.
Strictly. Now, Strictly would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Standing next to Brucey, making him look young, we'd be doing fantastic. What else? Which would you do?
I said, for Colin, strictly come dancing without the come dancing.
And which would you really draw a line under? Which would be the one you'd say, no way?
Benefit Street.
Which one?
Benefit Street.
Benefit Street. Yes, you wouldn't want to get involved in that one.
Yeah.
Which else?
Big Brother?
Big Brother would be terrible, wouldn't it? Terrible. Terrible, awful. Cameras on you all of the time.
You had to say something you people must have watched these things.
Well, the one, which is
I can't remember one on a desert island where they get eliminated.
oh yeah, Survivor or something like that. Yeah. Although they did seem to have some very young, attractive girls on there, apparently. The one for me that you could pull out my teeth and you could take my wife and my children and my house away from me and I wouldn't go on it would be embarrassing illnesses. Anyone watch that one?
No.
It is dreadful. Now, if you haven't watched it, Colin, you've been too busy reading, obviously. imagine the scene. You go to your GP and you go to him for a condition that you really are a bit nervous about talking to your GP about. And you fudge the conversation a bit, and you mention your knee a bit, and you mention your dodgy shoulder, and you talk about your eyesight or your sinuses, and then get the courage and the confidence, and you say, actually, Don, it's this slightly delicate thing, and can I show you? And then you show him, and your doctor, of course, is very kind and compassionate. Now imagine them doing that with a TV crew there. With a cameraman, with a director saying, come on, more pathos, more compassion. With a light saying, you're looking good, you're looking good. Can you imagine that? And can you imagine then ringing all your friends and saying, don't miss it, I'm on the telly. I'm not on a farming programme, but you'll be able to see my warts or my whatever those things are. If you have an explanation why people will do that when we have the best health service in the world, I would love to hear it because
It's for the money.
Possibly, but it can't be millions, can it?
It's when they zoom in. That's the terrible.
See any good experience?
It's true.
Powerful cameras.
You have to absolutely prostrate yourself, literally. So that is not a good thing to want to do. So that would be, for me, the one that I would want to avoid, definitely, no doubt. So we're thinking here about TV programs and thinking about all of these other quests and all these different times of our lives. And some of the things that I've observed, and it's very appetite having a grandfather with a new granddaughter Charlotte here, is that at different times in our lives we have different quests. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, and I look at the men in my family. So my youngest son is 7 years old. His main quest at the moment is to be able to pick things up from the floor, however far away they are, without getting off his chair. Do you know what that looks like? Sometimes it looks like that. He's obviously a bit short for me, not much. Sometimes it looks like this. And it really does look like that. And then, of course, he gets stuck and he can't get himself up, so he has to win. So that's his quest, and he would do it about 7 or 8 times a year. My eldest son is a late teenager, and I think his quest is more really of a hobby than a quest, because it is so consistent and it's so frequent. What he is most interested in doing is making sure that at every single sentence he delivers, he is absolutely in the right. Never wrong. especially with me. And in fact, he reminds me of something Mark Twain said. Mark Twain said, you know, when I was 14, my old man was so insufferable, I couldn't stand having the bloke around. He said, but luckily, by the time he got to 21, or I got to 21, it was amazing how much my old man had learned. So that's where my lad is at the moment. His quest to always be right. You've heard about some of my quests. My dad is on his own quest. My dad is like yourselves. He's a fellow Rotarian. He goes to his club in Biggleswade, Bedfordshire. He's recently bereaved. So his quest now, after 25 years of marriage and living on his own, is to show that he can live independently. And he's doing a pretty fine job. I went round there yesterday. He gave me roast chicken, a hot meal, the first hot meal my father has ever served me. You've got to take your hat off to him. I think it's quite an impressive thing. He's also testing his constitution very well. He told me yesterday, I don't believe in sell-by dates. He said they're a marketing myth. He wasn't referring to the chicken, luckily, that we just because we had eaten by this stage. I was really pleased about it. But he said, do you know what? He said, smell it, taste it, it's all right. He said, 3 years? What 3 years between friends? And so I suggested that if he, so long as it was either in the lifetime of this Prime Minister or the previous one, it's okay. But if he starts going back more than 2 Prime Ministers, then he might be pushing it a little bit. Now his other quest is, as I think plenty of people do, is to want to have a bit of a declutter of his house. So he was married to a lady who worked every Thursday in a charity shop. And if you look around the house, there's a fair bit of stuff there. And I said to my dad, did she bring one thing home from the charity shop every Thursday for 25 years? He said, do you know what, son? If she'd have brought one thing home every Thursday, we'd have been all right. Bloody car full every single week. And my dad has a sense of irony because he's taking it all back to the same charity shop, which I know is a really nice touch. So you can see that our quests change through the ages. But one thing does seem to be quite consistent when we get to the sort of ages that you are in and I'm entering into, that this idea of holding on to things is quite important. And I know they talk about war generations and like to hold stuff because they didn't have it and so on, but I find that I'm hoarding and I find I have many things in my loft. And I've known many people who like to hold on to their stuff. My favourite one was my ex-wife's father. He had lots of things he liked to look after, and he had in his utility room lots of boxes labelled. And one box was labelled, pieces of string, too small to use. So what could you do with it? He's planning on a crochet. So we're coming to the end of these musings, at the end of these thoughts. The idea of a quest. We've talked about this great, noble thing being driven to because of our physiology, because of our body. We've also talked about some of the slightly strange quests we have, from car insurance to the way that we talk about our work to getting ourselves on the telly. And I'll end with this one thought. I do understand that here in this room there are many of you who are happily married, been happily married for many years. Some of you may not have been, or just have been married, whether you're happily or not, who knows. There's a great quote by Catherine Hopkins. She said this in the late 19th century. She said, love is a quest. Marriage is a conquest. The rest of your life is an inquest. Thank you very much.